Thank you. Hello, everybody. What's your story? I've come here today to talk to you about the power of storytelling and the use of anecdotal stories in the classroom as a tool for learning. It is my belief that storytelling can be used in the classroom to promote innovation, integration, and education in every classroom, no matter what subject it is that you're teaching. All of you out there have been learners at some point, and I believe that you all have interesting stories to tell me. So to start us off, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to turn to the person next to you and have a good look at them. Have a good look at that person next to you and think about what stories might they have to tell you. If you're at home watching this or you're watching it around the globe, I'd like you to look at me and think, what stories might Sarah Telfer have to tell you? Okay. So why pedagogy and teaching? Well, storytelling is one of our oldest forms of teaching. And what is pedagogy? Well, pedagogy is just another word for teaching. And teaching comes in many forms, storytelling being one of them. And stories come in many forms too. Stories can come in the form of narratives, they can come in the form of anecdotal stories, they can come in the form of conversations or reflections as teachers when we're exchanging ideas about what works well or doesn't work well in our classroom. One of the most important skills that a teacher needs is communication. And I believe that teaching is all about being able to communicate with another person and interaction within that classroom. It is my belief that we all follow stories on a daily basis. So to illustrate this point, I'm going to bring up a logo, and I'd like you in the audience to tell me what you think this logo is. Are you ready? Okay, here it comes. What is it? Instagram. Yeah, so Instagram is a form of social media where people put up a photograph and they follow each other's stories by photographs, that photograph telling a story. Okay, let's do another one. What's that? Yeah, Snapchat. Snapchat is another form of social media where people upload their story, they upload their picture and it stays up there for 24 hours and then it disappears. So I quite like that story. That being up there on social media and being with you, a snapshot in time, if you like. So, if we go on with this idea that every picture tells a story, I'm going to share an activity that I do with my learners, my teacher trainers in the classroom. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to raise your hand if you have a mobile phone. Okay, so that's nearly everyone in here. Now I'd like you to raise your hand again if that mobile phone has a picture on it. Again, nearly everybody in here. So this is an activity that I do with my trainee teachers as a warm and an icebreaker activity. I get them to get their phones out, find a picture, and I get them to show each other the picture on their phone and tell the story of that picture. So I've brought one from my phone, and this is a picture of me. Who do you think the other people in the picture are with me? They're my family. They're actually my sisters. I've got 3 very bossy older sisters. So there's 3 of us. Where do you think the 4th one is? She is. the oldest one is taking the picture. She always likes to be in charge. So I believe that every picture tells a story. Okay, the conversation theory. This was a theory that was brought about by a practitioner called Prask. And the basic premise of this is that conversation is a conversational pedagogic tool that you can use in your classroom, where learners exchange stories with each other and learn things from each other. I'm going to share another activity now that I do with you in my classroom with trainee teachers. And this is one I often do as a warm and an icebreaker. And what I do is I bring in a blank t-shirt. And I get the students to write some pictures, symbols, numbers, anything, keywords, anything that tells a story about them. So I'm going to do my t-shirt with you. So here's a picture of me. This is Sarah Telfer. And I want you to guess things about me. Are you ready? Okay, what do you think the first thing is? Yeah, my first degree was in drama. That's where I like to get my communication skills from. Who do you think these are? Yeah, I've got 2 children. Their names are Amy and Laurie. Next one. Teacher. Yeah. So I've been a teacher for over 15 years and a teacher educator as well. And last one, who do you think this is? Husband? No, I'd like it to be, but sadly it's not. I've just put him in just to raise your interest today. Okay, so one of the people that I looked at in my doctoral research was a chap called Ivor Goodson, who works at Brighton University, and he's done a lot of work on narrative teaching and learning. And I'd just like to read a quote from him that I really like to you. And he says, "Man lives in a world where each occurrence is charged with echoes and reminiscences of what has gone before, where each event is a reminder of other things. Man remembers, preserving and recording his experiences. In this way, a person's self of sense is embedded in narrative construction. Life narratives can facilitate learning that is transformational." Okay, so how do we use narrative pedagogy in education? Well, narrative pedagogy is just the use of stories in teaching. And Goodson talks a lot about what he calls pedagogic encounters. And I quite like that term, pedagogic encounters. It sounds quite exciting. But what it is the swapping and sharing of stories. He also talks about narrative teaching. Narrative teaching could be simply a teacher sharing an anecdote with their class. Narrative learning is the sharing of learning or stories between students. And I believe that all of you can be collaborative storytellers and that you have fabulous, interesting stories to share. Teacher as human. I believe that when a teacher shares an anecdotal story, it makes them become more human to their class, and it actually elicits a story in response. Just go back on that one. Just to say that teacher is human, very often as teachers, we're told not to share stories with learners, to put in personal boundaries. I actually disagree with that. I think if you share a personal anecdote with your class, it makes you seem more human as a teacher. Learner as storyteller. This is actually one of my trainee teachers. This is Ishtiaq. He used to come and tell us fabulously interesting stories about his teaching practice. Moll et al. Say that adult learners are funds of knowledge. And what that means is that all of you have interesting stories and experiences, life experiences, work experiences, to bring to the classroom to teach each other. I'm just going to, very often, as a teacher trainer, I share anecdotal stories to show you that I made mistakes as a teacher too. And I'm going to share a story with you. This is a very quick story of when I was working in Italy. It was my first job. I was only 24, and I got the graveyard shift of the teenagers on a Friday afternoon who didn't want to be there to learn English. So in order to get them interactive, I decided to do a quiz. And they really got into the quiz, and they were jumping up and down on the desk, and the noise level was rising. There was lots of shouting and screaming going on. So much so that the secretary who was working in the office downstairs came upstairs and said, "What on earth is going on up here?" So what mistake had I made as a teacher? And I tell this story when I'm talking about controlling behaviour in class. What mistake had I made? I hadn't set the ground rules for the quiz. Therefore, I had lost control. So, when you go into your classroom next, and this is a picture of me and my teacher trainers, I would like you to think about what stories do your learners have to tell? Ofsted talks about the impact of teaching on learning. What impact does our teaching have on learning? And I would like you to consider what storytelling can do to make your teaching more effective. It could be something as simple as what made you decide to come on the course, when they're talking about the past, the middle, and the future of their lives. It could be something as simple as getting them to reflect on their teaching. In teacher education, we ask them to write a blog where they talk about their teaching experiences at the beginning, the middle, and the end of their course. Or it could be something as simple as, give me an example of when you have, so that you're relating experiences to true life experiences of the students and theory. Stories very often have international themes, and stories cross continents, if you like. So if we have a look at this model behind us, once we've introduced ourselves to our students and they get to know each other, very often on teacher training courses they'll come across some kind of crisis or complication. And what we have to do as teacher educators is to find some kind of resolution or conclusion to help our students. So it's very important that we listen to their stories. I'm a collector of stories, so I'd be very interested to hear all of your stories. I think we've heard some inspiring stories today. I would love it if people would email me their stories, any activities or ways that they've used teaching, stories in teaching. I'd be very interested to hear. And I believe that the next speaker is going to tell you a very interesting story that starts with a can of sardines. So I'm going to leave you with that question, and I'd like to hear back from you. What's your story?